Hello, this is Music Appreciate, and today I'd like to take a look at Acts chapter 5, verse 1 through 11. So I'll read it. But a man named Ananias, with his wife Sapphira, sold a piece of property, and with his wife's knowledge, he kept back for himself some of the proceeds and brought only a part of it and laid it at the apostles' feet. But Peter said, Ananias, why has Satan filled your heart to lie to the Holy Spirit and to keep back for yourself part of the proceeds of the land? While it remained unsold, did it not remain your own? And after it was sold, was it not at your disposal? Why is it that you have contrived this deed in your heart? You have not lied to man, but to God. When Ananias heard these words, he fell down and breathed his last. And great fear came upon all who heard it. The young men rose and wrapped him up and carried him out and buried him. After an interval of about 3 hours, his wife came in, not knowing what happened. And Peter said to her, "Tell me whether you sold this land for so much." And she said, "Yes, for so much." But Peter said to her, "How is it that you have agreed to test the Spirit of the Lord? Behold, the feet of those who buried your husband are at the door, and they will carry you out." Immediately she fell down at his feet and breathed her last. When the young men came in, they found her dead and carried her out and buried her beside her husband. And great fear came upon the whole church and upon all who heard of these things. Okay. Now, it's very important here, of course, to provide the context. So what I'll do is go back to the end of chapter 4. Here it says they had everything in common. Voluntary sales of assets with distribution as anyone had need. It became a trust fund. It became something, like they put it in the no parking zone, if you will. So somebody could get it as they had need. And then Joseph, who was called Barnabas, which means son of encouragement. Here's the first mention of Barnabas. A Levite, a native of Cyprus, sold the field that belonged to him and brought the money and laid it at the apostles' feet. So far, so good. These are people of means, helping people of low means. These are people who have lands, they're liquidating things they don't need. That's been sitting around, it isn't doing anything. Why should we have it? So their hearts filled with the Holy Spirit. And since grace was upon them all, and there was not a needy person among them, this was love in action. And it means that those who had means voluntarily sold the means and brought the proceeds to the apostles. Okay. This is before deacons. So it winds up with the apostles first. Now, enter chapter 5. But a man named Ananias, with his wife Sapphira, sold a piece of property, and with his wife's knowledge, he kept back for himself some of the proceeds. The fact that it has to say kept back for himself, I believe, means there was a lot of self in this. There was a lot of, I've been looking forward to get that money here. Now I finally got it. And he brought only a part of it, and he laid it at the apostles' feet. Now, the context here is that people are laying the entire amounts in front of the apostles in order to use. And this is what Joseph, called Barnabas, was doing. And this is what everybody else did. The understanding in the church, the going assumption was that those who had means sold and gave the money for use as anyone had need. And so, however, he didn't say anything to Peter. He didn't say, "I'm sorry, I have some of it. Would you want me to give it all?" He wasn't honest with his wife's knowledge. Hey, we could make a little money off this thing. And someone's going to ask, well, is it only the lie that constitutes the evil here, that for which they died? Or is it also, look, You have means, they have means. They gave it all. You held back with your wife's knowledge. Shouldn't you have given everything? Wasn't there facilities for someone who needed something in the future? Don't you have the means to make more? There are a lot of questions here that are in between the lines. At any rate, Ananias and Sapphira are complicit together. And then why? When it remained unsold, did it not remain your own? And after it was sold, was it not at your disposal? You had complete control over this money. Why is it that you have contrived this deed? Okay, there's concocted. Another synonym would be plotted this deed in your heart. You have not lied to man, but to God. Why do they lie to God and not to man? Well, because the going activity was to give this money for the apostles' distribution as any had need. So it's a contrived deed. It's a plotted deed. It's something that he couldn't have confessed because it would make him look bad. So Peter, by the power of the Holy Spirit, understood exactly what was going on with Ananias. And when Ananias heard these words, he fell down and breathed his last. And great fear came upon all who heard of it. All right, here comes the fear of the Lord. For the first time in the book of Acts, God is saying, okay, it's great. And blessed are you when you partake of this one bread and when you generous people are liquidating and giving. Yeah. But if you're going to be dishonest about it and present this as the whole price of what you sold, when you know you held some back, there is cause to fear the Lord. Okay? And that's exactly what happened. My, oh my, how I wish today we would fear the Lord like that. And bring down probably 90% of media ministries if we conducted ourselves in a way so as to avoid what happened to Ananias and Sapphira. Later on, his wife came in not knowing anything. Huh? For her, it was just another day in paradise for her. Hey, probably dreaming about what she was going to do with the money. And in the meantime, her husband's dead. And she's going to die too. And Peter tested her. Tell me whether you sold the land for so much. The amount is not mentioned. And she agreed. Yeah, that was the figure. He said, how is it you have agreed together to test the Spirit of the Lord? Now, how are they testing the Spirit of the Lord? They were doing something in an environment of godly, loving kindness. They were doing something at the incipience of the church. They were doing something assumed to be a joyful deed, and selfishness crept in, and she agreed to hold back and to lie about it. And then, behold, the feet of those who buried your husband are at the door, and they will carry you out. Immediately, she fell down at his feet and breathed her last. When the young men came in, they were waiting in the wings, the undertakers. They found her dead, and they carried her out and buried her beside her husband. Two liars lying together. And then great fear came upon the whole church. Again, a note of fear, a note of this God, who is all glorious, all wonderful, who had brought the evidence of his Spirit in the beginning with tongues of fire, and then the languages that followed, and then who had changed hearts of 3,000 people, and then more and more and more, and the Lord added to their number. This is something God is doing, all right? There's no hint of man's ingenuity, man's going to graduate school and learning a new mode of ministry. This is the preaching of the word. We should need to get back to that. And then great fear. You know, people think the fear of the Lord is a liability. Even those who believe We're always told faith over fear. And that's not wrong, because we should have faith in individual reckonings of happenings over our fears. But the fear of the Lord is not a neurosis. It's not a liability. It is that healthy respect with the avoidance of whatever brings the Lord's wrath. Not just because it brings the Lord's wrath, but because these people had seen the goodness of the Lord. And to answer his goodness with deceit is damnable. Thank you for listening.